In this video, I'm going to use Vlookup, except we're going to talk about a close match rather than an exact match. So if you remember from my previous video, when we do a Vlookup, it wants four things. The first is the lookup value. So for instance, if I want to return the amount of money a person has to pay, I'm going to look up HMOF. And then over here in the table array, I grab that. Finally, in this example, I'm just going to hard code column 2 for full-time people, but the important part is this range lookup. There's two choices. In the previous video, we only did false, which was an exact match. And what that means is I want to match that word, or four letters, exactly to what's in this table. And if it doesn't match, so for instance, if this was HMOL or something, you're going to return, VLOOKUP's going to return NA because it can't find it. So fix that, put an F, and then it matches exactly, and it's finding the 1500. Okay, exact match. Now, let's take, I want to calculate a recognition award based off years of service, and here's the table we're looking at. So I can use VLOOKUP just like before. I'm going to look up this 10, and this time I'm going to look in this table array. But notice 10 is not going to be an exact match here. And by the way, it shows up as recognition 8. That's simply a named range. So those cells have been named that name. The column number that I want to return, of course, is 2. So this is column 1. Here's column 2. But instead of false, if I were to put false, it would return NA because it can't find the number 10 in the red table. This time we're going to put true. I need an approximate match. And here's how VLOOKUP works. It grabs this lookup value and it runs through the table, finding the largest value that's still smaller than the lookup value. So that's why it returned 500, because it ran through here and said, what's the largest value that's still smaller than the lookup value? And the answer is 7. 11 is larger than the lookup value. So 7 is the largest value that's still smaller than the lookup value. And so that's why it returns 500. I need to go through, I think I'm okay. A named range is automatically absolute, so I don't need to absolute that. It is by definition. And so the 2 is going to return 100 because 1 is the largest value that's still smaller than the lookup value. And obviously I can drag this down or double click to autofill, and it'll get the recognition award for all the years of service, and that's how it works. And that's when we use a close match, is when a value in the table is not going to match exactly to the values in years of service. Now, one of the tricks, if you're doing a close match, this table has to be sorted ascending, like it is as you see it here. If you're doing an exact match, it doesn't matter how the table is sorted because it's going to look for the value over here exactly, and so it doesn't care how the sort is. But on a close match, the sort matters. Let's do another example. Let's say I have people with grades or scores, if you will, and I want to return the letter grade. Now in this case, I only have the table inside of a text box. I need to create the table. Okay, so you know we go from 0 to 59 as an F, and 60 to 69 as a D, 70 to 79 as a C. How do I create this table? So here's what you do. I need to create this table correctly so that I can use the close match of VLOOKUP. The rule is I want to grab the lowest value out of each of these intervals and put them in my table, okay? So in other words, I'm going to put 0. That's the lowest value out of that interval. Here I'm going to put 60. Here I put 70. Here I put 80. And in the last cell I'll put 90. So those are the smallest value out of each of these intervals. And then finally the grade we put is just as you'd expect. Okay, that's how you set up the table. It has to be sorted ascending, and then you just put a single value. Students who aren't paying attention to this lecture or miss class will often put like 0 to 59, 60 to 69, and don't recognize that, first of all, that's not even a number, right? To you and I, we understand those as numeric values. Excel does not. That's text. Because it has that dash in there, it's a piece of text. And so if I try to do a equal VLOOKUP, and I grab 75 and go, oh, well, it'll figure out that it's between it. No, it won't. It doesn't even, that's a 75, and this is a 70 to 80 or whatever. It's not going to figure that out. So recognize that that is text. It's not a number. And I see I do have a typo right here. That should be 80. Okay. So now let's do the VLOOKUP. We have our table set up correctly. I'm going to look at this student score, comma, the table array is just right here. Now this time it's not a named range, so I have to hit F4 on the keyboard to make sure I get that locked. And then the column index is 2. And finally, oh boy, I better make sure I put true. It's an approximate match. So there you go. 75 is a C because that's the largest value. That's still smaller than 75, right? So it's not going to choose 80, which is the line B. So basically 70 through 80 is going to be a C, and then 80 through 90 is going to be a B. And then the beauty of this, if somebody has an 89.9999, they're still going to get a B, all right? Because it's not 90. It has to be 90 exactly. So anyway, I think I'm ready to drag that down, and everybody will get their appropriate grade. So these people got A's. This guy got an F. 0 is the smallest value, largest value that's still smaller than 45. So that's why that guy gets an F right there. This guy gets a C at 76. So let's do one more example, or actually 2 more examples. Here we just want to find, I will hide that comment. Or not. This is interesting. It's a change in Office 365 that I'm not familiar with, so it must be a note. Show hide note? Huh, interesting. It used to be show hide comments. Anywho's, here's our deal. We have total cost of order, and we want to calculate the shipping. If it's less than $100, $5. 100 to 200, $20. 200 to 300, $30. Anyway, you get the idea. And again, on purpose, I put this in a text box so that we actually have to create the table in order to use it. All right, so anywhere on the spreadsheet, it doesn't matter. I'll just stick it right here in column F. I need to create this shipping table. Maybe I'll go ahead and put a label up here, shipping table. And this column will be the amount of the order, and then the next column will be the dollar amount of shipping. So how do I do this? The rule is I want the lowest value out of each interval. Well, less than 100, what's the lowest value? It's actually 0. So I'm going to put a 0, and then it's $5 of shipping cost. This will be 100, this will be 200, and this will be 300. So those are the smallest values out of each of those intervals, and then of course we can put 20, 30, and 40. So that's kind of the trickiest part of this whole VLOOKUP, is getting that table set up right. And remember, ascending order. It has to start smallest, go to largest. Now we're ready to do the easy part, which is VLOOKUP. I'm going to look up how much did this person order, comma. Where's my table array? It's right here. Whoops, I didn't need to grab that top row right there. Don't forget to lock your table array. Again, column 2, we're having some very simple tables here, and true for an exact match. Hit enter. There you go. So $40 for that large order, and then as I double click on that, here's $20 for 128, right? Because this is the largest value that's still smaller than 128. So that grabs the $20, which is what we want, right? 100 to 200 is $20. $5 here for a $5 order. That's expensive. So that's how we set that one up. And finally, one more example. If you go out to the internet, they'll probably have, like if you wanted to calculate people's taxes based on a tax table, the table very often looks something like this, right? If you're between 0 and 880, it's 10%, 881 to 2617, 15%, blah, 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 keep going through that. So just like before, we're kind of just reiterating the same thing we've already learned, is I need the lowest value out of each interval. So I'm grabbing these random values and putting them in a table. And now this one is anything over 313,213. And now I can put in our percentage values. There we go. I'm ready to do a VLOOKUP to calculate the tax. So VLOOKUP, I'm going to look up this person's salary, and I'm going to return one of these percentages in this table. So I'm going to lock that table array. Again, column 2 is the number that I want to return, or the place, and now it's true. I need an approximate match because not every salary in this list is going to show up in the table exactly. In fact, it'd be really rare that it is exact. Now notice it returned 0.15, which is this row right here, right? But I want to actually calculate the dollar amount, not just that percentage. So VLOOKUP's returning 0.15. I now need to multiply that times the salary. So all I do is take my VLOOKUP formula and then go times and times that blue cell, B2. So this VLOOKUP's returning 0.15. I now want to take that and multiply it times the original salary. So there is this person's tax, and it's set to go. I can double click, drag it down, and obviously I'm getting, so this guy is returning 35% of his tax amount, and then I'm taking that and multiplying it times the 13,000. So that is it, VLOOKUP on a close match. The last thing I'll mention is a mistake I see a lot of students make. Let's go back to employee data. And that is, if I do a VLOOKUP, let's go just in this column, I want to return the dollar amount for these health plans. So equal VLOOKUP. I'm going to look up this HMOF, and I'm going to look up this table right here. We're just going to make everybody full-time in this case. And column 2. Notice this range lookup has square brackets around it. It means it's optional, and so for whatever reason, a lot of students don't fill it out. But let me open up the dialog box and run down here to the range lookup. Notice its range lookup is a logical value, true or false, and true or omitted. So that means it's going to do a close match if you don't fill it out. And if you type the word false, it's going to do an exact match. Well, in this case, I need an exact match, and yet students will not fill it out. And so then it comes back with a close match. And it's like, oh, what the heck, it still works, right? HMOF for full time, it's 1,500. And you drag it down, and for the most part, you're getting all the right things. None, all of a sudden you're not, right? None should be 0. And yet he's getting 875. That's the problem. If you leave that off, it's really hard to recognize that you may be getting bad data, because sometimes it works with it off and sometimes it doesn't when you want an exact match. And so if you want an exact match, you have to fill that out. And so what I try to tell students is always fill it out. Always put the word false or true depending on what you need. Never leave it blank. Even though you can get away with leaving it blank, but that defaults to true, meaning you're going to do a close match. And as you can see, you run into the error of, hey, it's not returning any errors, and yet you're getting bad answers. You're getting the fact that none should be 0, and we're getting 875. That's the problem when you're doing a close match, when you really mean to do an exact match. So be careful with that. Always fill out that range lookup, that fourth parameter.